the topic of the US Pavilion, I am very excited by. Like the fact that Cynthia and Monica said, let's look at political, social, and urban development, but let's find out how architecture can engage that. And I thought that's very good. I mean, rather than being against architecture, they really said, let's look at Detroit and try to find a way to use architecture to imagine something which is a cultural, political, economic thing. And I took that very seriously. I mean, I think the original brief was leaning, like if you talk to the developer, they would tell you they want to add like entertainment, live-work lofts, coffee shops. You know, they want to attract these so-called millennials that everybody wants to develop for. I don't really want to live in a city full of millennials. I live in Venice Beach. Too many millennials. I don't like them. They're like 1% of the population that every developer designs for. These like mythical rich millennials with their coffee habits and expensive taste. And so for me, I really wanted to think, how do I design this not for these millennials, but for industry and you know, the urbanism of Detroit. So, and that's something that I didn't bring to it. That's something that the commissioners set up, which is from the theme of the Biennale, I think. So, in the last 6 months, I started a company that's doing indoor and outdoor land drones, that's looking at moving goods inside buildings. And so when I was given this Packard Plant by the US Pavilion, I thought about how to combine, say, the changes happening to cities because of autonomous vehicles and intelligent transportation with the idea of small vehicles changing the way you organize a building. Like instead of elevators, that you would start to use small electric vehicles in buildings that are smart, and to rethink a new kind of a building typology. So we took the existing Packard plant and cut everything at the second floor, and then connected all the elevators at the third floor with this, what we call a drone superhighway, which is a way of moving goods. The building is 1 kilometer long, so it's how you could distribute goods. I also think that if you have a 3 million square foot building in Detroit, the right use for it isn't housing, it's actually industry. So a fulfillment center, like an Amazon type fulfillment center, also made a lot of sense. So that's what we put in the first 2 floors. It's just warehouse of goods to be moved and transformed. And then on top of all that, I was inspired by Cedric Price in the 1970s with his Potteries Think Belt and Detroit Think Grid. And so there I decided to try to mix this industrial system of movement and transportation with a university, which is that long bar that runs along the length of the building, as well as with research. So there are 4 buildings that sit on the 4th and 5th floor that are research park buildings, and there's a 5th one in the middle, which is an auditorium and an exhibition hall. So it's an idea of mixing kind of private industry like research with public and civic functions like the university, all combined with the new urbanism of goods distribution and kind of autonomous vehicles.
Do you think this is the future for the new cities?
Honestly, this isn't the future. Where I come from in California, this is just what people do. I mean, this is like something that a Facebook or Microsoft or Google or Apple, this is none of this is futuristic, none of it all exists. It's just no one would think about putting something like this in a city like Detroit. I think the existing Packard plant, it's a beautiful place and it's an amazing piece of infrastructure. So to think about taking a kind of knowledge economy factory and putting it back in the heartland of the United States in a city like Detroit, I think is actually just a practical idea. So for me, it wasn't about thinking about the future, it's just how do you take something from the world of Silicon Valley and use it as a template for other developments in other parts of the world.
What's the role of parametricism in your architecture? In your investigating shapes and forms?
Well, for me, the form and the language of the project is all about movement and transportation, and a lot of that was done by programming vehicles and looking at how vehicles move. Really, it's generated out of flow and distribution. So for me, parametricism is something you could use to talk about the way you would design the structure, let's say. And sure, this structure, a lot of this was modeled. Some of it was scripted, but most of it was modeled. But for me, parametricism is not just about structure, it's also just about how you design form, whether you use computational fluid dynamics or finite element analysis, but it's using data to drive form. Also using it to drive arrangement and composition. So for me, that's what parametricism is. I know for Patrick, it's much more about structure and cladding. For me, it's that, but it's also more. It's really about urbanism.